Poe,
Present.
Daniel Larson,
Present.
Janet Leo,
Here.
Scott Ohm,
Here.
Jahi Simbai,
Here.
Will Kearns,
Here.
Vivian Voss,
Present.
and Richard Peterson is absent tonight.
The next order on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the order.
I'll second.
Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Seeing none, call for vote.
Motion passed 7-0.
Is there a motion to approve the order of the minutes for June 20, 2019?
Can I ask a question about the minute? After the, okay.
Yeah, well, you get a chance. So I needed a first motion.
I move to approve the minutes of June 20th, 2019.
Is there a second? Second. Are there any additions or corrections to the order of the minutes?
I just have a question on how this number 7 is worded. 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph. Last line, in the short term, there would not be a bike lane only in front of the subject property. I know I asked the question about where the bike lane would be, and it was supposed to be on the west side of the subject property, I believe. So I wasn't understanding what cannot be a bike lane.
Can you clarify where it is?
Number 7,
I'm not seeing it on what page.
oh, page 2, sorry. Public hearing.
1, 2, 3,
Fourth paragraph.
Fourth paragraph, 7A, fourth paragraph, last sentence. In the short term, there would not be a bike lane only in front of the subject property. It just didn't seem clear to me on the not and the only. You remember me asking the question about where the bike lane would be on?
Right, so the bike lane was dedicated, but it's not going to be striped or function as a bike lane just for that segment or that frontage, because there's not a bike lane on the rest of that segment of Tabor.
So it's just going to be a pad of cement that will eventually be designated as a bike lane?
You know, I don't know off the top of my head what that constructed section looks like, but the dedication would be there for when we have sufficient right-of-way on that full segment of Tabor to install.
Okay.
There's probably 3 or 4 properties on Tabor that have dedicated that right-of-way already, so it's sort of, if you look at the right-of-way layer, it jogs in and out, but the street won't jog in and out in the interim.
So you think in the way that this is worded, because it just sounded kind of a back and forth, is what you're attempting to say on that?
Can try to, yeah, we can try to make that more clear for posterity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments?
No, no.
Okay. Call for a vote.
Motion passed 6-0 with 1 abstaining.
Okay, I open up the public forum. This is the time for any person to speak on any subject not appearing on tonight's agenda. There is a case number WS 1901, so this is for anything not appearing on that.
No one has signed up.
Okay. I will now move on to the public hearing and continue case number WS-19-01, an application filed by Riverside Terrace LLC for approval of a major subdivision for property zone residential 3 to allow for 18 single-family townhome units located at 11661 West 44th Avenue. And prior to opening that back up, I also need to swear anybody in who plans to speak, with the applicant, staff, and anyone from the public who plans to testify or comment. Please stand and raise your right hand. Are any of you commenting tonight? Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth in the matter as you know it?
Yes.
Thank you. And as for the staff report,
Thank you. Good evening. For the record, Lauren Mikulak with the city's Community Development Department. So I don't have a presentation at the podium tonight, but I do want to recap sort of where we are in this case because it has been continued. The public hearing was originally opened on June 6th, and 7 commissioners were present, all but Commissioner Ohm. So the first thing I actually want to do is, for the record, confirm Mr. Ohm's ability to participate in the decision-making and tonight's proceedings. You would be eligible to participate if you have read the staff report, reviewed the tape, and read the minutes. Can you confirm that you've done that?
I have, yes.
Okay, thank you. So all of you may continue to participate in tonight's proceedings. Again, my comments tonight are going to be brief. On June 6th, Scott Cutler presented the case on behalf of staff. The applicant testified, the public testified, and there was discussion amongst you. The case, as was mentioned, is approval of a plat for 18 townhomes. There's an adjacent property under separate ownership that was also going through entitlements for townhome development. And if both projects proceed, they could be connected by an internal drive. And as part of your discussion on June 6th, you requested to review that adjacent project first and requested additional traffic analysis from the applicant that accounted for both projects that were pending in the area. So you approved a motion to postpone your decision on this case until tonight. You did review the subdivision and the specific development plan for the adjacent project on June 20th, and the applicant has completed the traffic analysis that was requested. It's provided in the meeting packet. Staff has reviewed that traffic analysis, and based on the trip generation and potential distribution patterns, a turn lane on 44th is not warranted. Staff does not feel it would be an appropriate exaction or condition because it's not proportional to the impact of this 18-unit development. So as we presented in June and as written in the staff report, we are recommending approval of the subdivision application, which is creating the lot lines and easements appropriate for the 18 townhomes, which is the land use already approved by the underlying zoning. This is a continued case, and as noted in the meeting packet, the public hearing is still open. That's what allows us to present this new traffic testimony to you. We've confirmed with the city attorney that it's also what allows us to have the applicant testify if they wish tonight, and any members of the public. This is a major subdivision application, so your recommendation would be forwarded to City Council, who would make the final decision, and that hearing is currently scheduled for August 12th. That's all the comments I have. I am joined again tonight by Dave Brossman from our Public Works Department, so we're both happy to take any questions when you might have them.
Thank you. Commissioner Simba? Commissioner Antle?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Larson?
No questions.
Commissioner Voss?
I do. I've got I think most of them are for staff. Page 5, number 2 was on the conditions. Can we talk about that at this time?
Sure.
The developer shall enter into a subdivision improvement agreement and a lot sale restriction. Can you explain just that verbiage?
Sure. So those are 2 agreements that are standard, particularly in the case of a townhome development. So the subdivision improvement agreement is the document that both the city and the developer sign. It obligates the developer to construct certain public improvements, not only those in the right-of-way, but those that are on-site and are necessary to allow the townhomes to be built. So it's curb, gutter, sidewalk, amenity zones, street lights, those internal drive aisles and alleys, landscaping, detention. It not only obligates to them, but it also details the sequencing. So what do you have to have completed before we issue your first permit, before we issue subsequent permits, and before we issue certificates of occupancy? That subdivision improvement agreement also includes provisions for financial guarantee. So the developer has to post a letter of credit. That's required by the subdivision regulations to ensure that if the project were to fail in the worst case scenario, we have the wherewithal to get it to a certain level of stabilization or completion. The lot sale restriction covenant is something that we use really only for townhome projects. And we use that as sort of a secondary backstop to say that you're not allowed to convey a townhome until you've completed all of the public improvements. So, for example, if we get this plat recorded and you create 18 lots and you go sell them to 18 homeowners, but you don't build the alley or the drainage, you have 18 people who can't do anything with the property they purchased. It's called zombie subdivisions or paper subdivisions. It was a real issue, particularly sort of in other states in the Mountain West, that approved a lot of plats at once. Sold a lot of things, the recession happened, and there were hundreds of owners that owned land that they couldn't do anything with. So it's our backstop to make sure that you can go, developer can go under contract with a home buyer, that's the typical model, but they wouldn't close with them until the improvements are in place, obviously protection for that homeowner.
And I think that was a back answer to my question, which was first of all, how does the developer know that the 18 lots he's building is not oversaturating the market, or there is a market for it, and then they do their due diligence and marketing, and that's how they know they can build 13 townhomes and know that they're going to get them sold.
Right.
And then the backside of that through the city is this type of agreements that then cover that basis also.
Yep.
Okay. How do you meet the HOA requirements? Is that something the city poses on the developer? And what are the HOA requirements that must be met then for the?
For our purposes, review of HOA documents are relatively minimal. We're not looking at the covenants and the sort of architectural stuff. We're looking at, have you made it very clear to your homeowners that they have an obligation, financial obligation, to maintain common space? So in a project like this, their HOA dues need to maintain the alleys, the drive aisle, the detention, the landscaping, the features that are required to either make it developable or to meet the zoning requirements. So we ensure that that's abundantly clear so that in the future an HOA doesn't say, it doesn't appear to me that we have any obligation. They can include a whole lot more in their HOA, but that's what we're looking for.
And that connection between the two possible developments, is that part of that HOA, or half of it is, or?
Right, so they would likely have a private agreement between the two HOAs, but we would ensure that any adjacent developments are clearly responsible for the improvements on their property. So the HOA is actually who owns the underlying land of that alley and who owns the detention and owns the landscaping. So it'd be two. In the case of potential cross-access, it'd be two HOAs with separate ownership obligations, and they may have a cost-share agreement depending on sort of traffic patterns, but that would be private, how they want to share it. We just want to make sure they know they have to do it.
All right, and then one last question. How do we get neighborhood traffic study as opposed to just a development-specific traffic study?
Yeah, I mean, I might let Dave answer some of that. We do have requirements that traffic studies, account for what's happening on the adjacent streets. We do regional studies ourselves. We're doing a regional study in the TOD area. It's rare for us to have two active pending developments next to each other the way that we have in this case. So it can be, we can require that as we're going through that. The traffic study has to sort of reflect what's actually going on. And we can ask them to broaden it if they need to. We can ask them include other variables that we know of, like pending applications, as we've done here, where we asked them to consider them together when they did this traffic analysis that you requested.
So that's what you would do on your own knowledge to ask for a neighborhood or a wider traffic study? We wouldn't have to ask that from you to
Right.
do? You
Yeah,
would do it?
so for example, we start small. We have a potential school interested in a property on the east side of town, and we already have said, we need to know what the trip generation is. It's a big enough difference. We essentially, trip generation is easy. I think Dave and maybe Jordan have described in the past, it's very formulaic. So we have a sense of how many trips there may be generated and how it relates to the, adjacent streets. Something like this size on Wadsworth is a tiny drop in the bucket. So it is case by case and sort of location by location. With the city's special projects, we do more regional traffic studies like the TOD. We expect to undertake a 44th Avenue corridor plan next year, and we've included a desire for a traffic engineer to be a sub-consultant on that, to do a more corridor-wide traffic study. So it just kind of depends on the scenario. There's not a one-size-fits-all answer to that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Leo? Commissioner Kearns?
No questions.
I have one question. So at the previous hearing, there's talk about that this project had some issues because of the fire access. Has that been resolved?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So we have advanced the easement document that would be required for that emergency hammerhead, essentially, that would be located at the northwest corner of the subject property and located on an adjacent parcel. So we have that easement, and it will be recorded by separate document. That is a condition of approval of this subdivision plat. And it will be noted on the planned building group, which is the site plan that would allow this to proceed forward. So we have that advanced to a level of where we're comfortable.
Are there any other questions for staff? No? Thank you. Would the applicant like to present any supplemental information?
There's no answer, any questions?
Okay, are there any questions for the applicant? No? I'm going to move on to the citizens forum. The citizens forum is already open. There will be a 3-minute time limit, and time may not be yielded to another person. Is there any citizens that have signed up to speak, or if you haven't signed up, there are just 2 in the audience, you're welcome to come up if you wish. Not from the, you have to come to the podium, please. Yep. And each of you will have, you can both come up if you want, not at the same time, but you'll have 3 minutes. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Sharon, and my what? Sharon Vallar, Vallar, 11641 West 44th Avenue. So I live right next to this property that's being built, and I have, well, a couple concerns. So my house has a backyard, and it's concrete cemented, and I worry that machineries working around the property might cause some vibrations that might crack my backyard cement or my house. Is there some sort of, I don't know, guarantee that this is not going to happen, or?
We will respond to all the, we'll respond to your questions after you're done.
I'm sorry?
The format's going to be, we're not going to answer back and forth between your questions. We'll let you ask whatever questions you want. I'll write them down, and then once you're done, and if he wants to come and talk to you, that's fine. And then after we're done with the public, then I'll close the public hearing, and then we'll have the staff and applicant answer any of those questions.
Got it. So that was my first question.
Okay.
And my second question, I guess, is like how high the building is going to be, because I do have a view of the mountains from my property, and so I'm kind of just a little sad if it's going to get covered.
Okay. That's it? Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience? No? Okay. I'm going to close the citizens forum. And the first question, I don't know if these would probably more applicant than staff. If the applicant could come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
Sure.
Sir.
I'm Steven Sundberg, and I live at 9640 West Chatfield Avenue in Littleton.
So there are 3 questions. One was machinery vibrations during construction, whether or not that impacts surrounding neighbors.
Sure, and you know, I honestly can't guarantee there won't be construction vibration, but I do believe we sent a letter out with my contact information, so if she would like to get in touch with me, I'd love to coordinate if there are any issues in the future.
Okay. And then, I guess, right now, we're just, we're not talking about necessarily about buildings, but she did have a question about the building height.
Sure, and I believe the building height is limited to 30 feet.
Is it a
The zoning is residential 3. All residential zoning in the city is actually allowed to go up to 35 feet. This project does not likely maximize that.
Okay. And I guess that goes with the view, so the building will be a maximum, all we know for now is the maximum of 35 feet?
Correct, and
Okay.
I don't believe they'd exceed the apartment complex on the other side or anything like that, so,
Okay. Thank you.
of course.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments from the commission? No? Let's see. Yes.
I have one for the developer.
You have a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One for the developer. What was your criteria, marketing strategy for knowing that these 13 units were sellable? And I assume you're selling them, not rent?
For sale, yes.
For sale.
And I believe I had that same similar question. Really, we do a due diligence period at the beginning of the project. It's not part of my team that looks into that, but they do come back and tell us what a good asking price for the land would be to make it feasible, so on and so forth. And we do that through the pre-application process as well.
All right, and what if every sale becomes a rental?
There's some limitations that we do in the HOA documentation that holds them back from doing so for a year. Short of that, there's not really any requirements that we would have.
Thank you.
Yep, of course.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, at this time, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend approval of case number WS 1901, a request for approval of a major subdivision on property located at 11661 West 44th Avenue for the following reasons. 1, all requirements of the subdivision regulations, Article 4 of the Zoning and Development Code have been met. 2, all agencies can provide services to the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense with the following conditions. 1, prior to recordation, the applicant shall pay the required fees in lieu of parkland dedication. 2, the developer shall enter into subdivision improvement agreements and lot sale restriction covenant agreement prior to recordation of the subdivision plat. 3, prior to issuance of building permits, the developer shall provide homeowners association covenants for review and approval by staff. And 4, an emergency access easement to allow the subdivision to function independently in the event that the adjacent parcel is not developed shall be recorded by separate instrument prior to the recordation of the subdivision plat.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Okay, call for a vote.
Motion passed 6-1.
Thank you. Okay, we are now on to agenda item 8, old business. No old business, okay. Any new business?
The only new business is just a couple updates on dates. We anticipate canceling the August 1st meeting. We don't have anything ready for that agenda. We do expect to have the August 15th meeting. We'll have a couple of cases for that agenda, and I appreciate your patience and perseverance in responding to your availability for a follow-up training. It's hard to schedule 12 busy people. Right now, it looks like the earliest would be maybe the October 3rd date, but I will send an email. I haven't heard back from everyone yet on that. But before then, there's not yet something that's popped out as being a good option. So any questions you have, I know that's the goal. Any questions you have between now and then, you know where to find us. But the training, I think I put in my last email, our goal was to have sort of a full attendance if we can versus sort of speeding it up and having lesser attendance. So I think that's everything I have.
I would agree, and I'll just tell you, October 15th, I'll be gone.
15th, you'll be gone. Okay, good to know. 17th is a Thursday. The 3rd, the October 3rd right now is a front runner, but I haven't.
The 15th of October is a Tuesday.
Oh, August 15th. Okay, okay.
I thought you were talking about October.
That's helpful. Okay. Correct.
Are there any other comments, questions? Okay, is there a meeting to adjourn? Motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call for a vote?
Motion passed 7-0.